Synthesizers aren't just musical instruments, they're geopolitical artifacts. Take a look at where they are built and where they aren't, and you'll learn a lot more about global power, culture and technology than from most headlines and social media junk we scroll through every day. Hi, you're watching Floyd Steinberg's YouTube channel. I've spent years messing around with hardware synthesizers, DIY kits and weird boutique machines, and at some point I realized there's a pattern here, a global pattern. So today I want to show you a world map you've probably never seen before. A map of synthesizer manufacturers, DIY communities, and the geopolitical stories they reveal. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. To understand why synthesizers can tell us something about geopolitics, let's take a look at the United Kingdom. The UK isn't just a country with a strong music culture, it's also a country with a very specific kind of technological culture. Brands like Novation, Modal, Dubrek, EDP and Focusrite's ownership of Sequential show something important. Britain doesn't dominate the global synth market by sheer industrial scale, it dominates through innovation, design and creative engineering. And here's the key point. Synthesizers are a luxury technology. They require advanced electronics, DSP knowledge, manufacturing capabilities, and maybe most importantly, a culture that values experimentation and music technology. When a country produces well-known synthesizer brands, this usually means three things. It has the education to train engineers, the wealth to support niche industries, and the cultural identity to make these instruments relevant. The UK is a perfect example for this. It's not a manufacturing superpower like, for example, China, and it's not an electronics giant like Japan, but it has deep music tradition, strong universities and a huge creative industry. And that combination produces companies that punch far above their weight. So when we're looking at synthesizers, we're not only looking at musical instruments. We are looking at the intersection of culture, technology and national identity. And the UK shows exactly how those forces come together. Here is a map of the world's synth superpowers. Let's take a look at the countries and the synthesizer history and the current trajectories. We'll begin in the west and then move further east country by country and region by region. Beginning with the United States of America. It's fair to say that the United States are the birthplace of modern synthesizers. The Minimoog not only introduced a new and exciting sound that spread across the world quickly, it effectively created a new branch of the music industry. After World War II, the US were at the height of their economic, cultural and technological power. So it's no surprise that companies like Moog, Sequential, Buchla, Kurzweil, EMU and Oberheim found fertile ground there and shaped the global perception of what a synthesizer even is. Owning an Oberheim or Sequential still carries a sense of pride. These instruments aren't just tools, they're cultural symbols. In 2026, the situation looks slightly different. Companies that once felt like unshakable institutions are being bought by international conglomerates. Some of these new owners seem to be capable of carrying the legacy forward, others maybe not. The future seems a little uncertain. In one sentence, the United States remain the home of synthesizer innovation and culture, but they no longer seem to be home of an independent synth industry. France is a small but incredibly influential player on the synthesizer world map. Companies like Arturia and Mutable Instruments show how strong France is in digital innovation, hybrid design and boutique engineering. And culturally, artists like Jean-Michel Jarre, Daft Punk, Air and Justice, to name only a few, turned synthesizers into a part of France's musical national identity. France isn't an industrial giant in this space, but a cultural one. Let's be real here, the UK is a synthesizer superpower. Brands like Novation, EMS, UDO, Focusrite, EDP West and Analog Solutions are respected worldwide for their quality and innovation. But what truly elevates the United Kingdom is cultural impact. Artists such as Pink Floyd, The Who, Genesis, Yes, Gary Newman, Depeche Mode, New Order, Orbital, or The Prodigy and many more introduced synthesizers to the world and shaped entire genres. And there are historical reasons for that. The UK was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, which created a long-lasting engineering culture, and later a world-class university system that continues to attract talent from everywhere. Add that to the legacy of the British Empire, English as a global language, and media institutions like the BBC that remain internationally influential. So British artists operate inside a powerful, well-connected media ecosystem that amplifies their work around the world. And of course, they have the unique ability to explore new sonic territory while keeping strong songwriting at the core, a balance that helped turning synthesizers into global cultural icons. Germany is far more influential in electronic music than it gives itself credit for. Companies like Waldorf, Döpfer, Vermona, Axis, Native Instruments and of course Behringer have shaped the industry and the music scene. And Germany also created one of the most important technologies in modern music production, Steinberg and the invention of VST. Virtual studio technology revolutionized how synthesizers and effects are built, used and distributed, and it remains the global standard today. Acts like Kraftwerk, Tangerine Dream, the Neue Deutsche Welle of the 80s, and Eurodance and techno in the 90s weren't just commercially successful, they defined complete genres and influenced artists all over the world. By the way, you can browse YouTube for "I didn't know this song was German" to see what I mean. Germany is a wealthy country with a long established engineering and industrial culture, but also with a tradition of self-doubt and the peculiar talent of tripping over its own feet. If you buy a German synthesizer, you can be sure it's packed with cutting-edge technology and bold ideas, and there will at least be one bug or feature that drives you absolutely insane. Italy is one of the most fascinating countries on the synthesizer world map. It combines rich artistic tradition with a surprisingly strong electronic music scene and several influential manufacturers. Today, companies like IK Multimedia, Studio Logic and especially Fatah come to mind, a company whose keybeds are used in nearly every major synthesizer brand in the world. But Italy also has a long history of music instrument makers. Krumar, Elka, Sound Machine and GRP are well-known names that reflect Italy's unique blend of engineering and aesthetics. Just like in its arts, architecture and industrial design, Italian synthesizers have a distinct sense of style. And culturally, Italy has been influential for decades, with artists like Giorgio Moroder, Gigi D'Agostino, Medusa and Mauro Picotto helping shape global electronic music. Italy has the longest running tradition of music, engineering and art of any country on this list. And I think one can feel that heritage in every instrument it makes. Scandinavia, and especially Sweden, is one of the most innovative regions on the synthesizer world map. Companies like Nord, Teenage Engineering or Electron show how strong the Nordic countries are in design, engineering and modern electronic instruments. Geopolitically, Scandinavia is wealthy, highly educated and remarkably stable. That stability creates the perfect environment for small tech companies to thrive, and it's one reason why Nordic synth companies are known for reliability, innovation and their very specific design language. Culturally, Scandinavia has produced globally influential electronic artists. The Knife, Robin, Royce Cobb, Aha, Avicii and Björk. Scandinavia doesn't dominate by size. It dominates by design, quality and stability. Eastern Europe and the Baltic states don't have large synthesizer corporations, but they have some of the most creative boutique and DIY developers in the world. Companies like Polyend in Poland, Bastel Instruments in the Czech Republic, XAOC devices in Poland, and Blokas in Lithuania show how much innovation can come from small teams with a strong engineering background. These instruments feel different because they are different. Geopolitically, these regions combine excellent technical education with a until recently tradition of solving problems with limited resources. A situation in which you develop a very particular kind of creativity. Culturally, Eastern Europe has a vibrant electronic underground scene. Poland's Unsound Festival, for example, the modular scenes in Prague and Budapest, and the growing Baltic club culture. Again, this region does not dominate by industrial scale, it dominates by ingenuity, experimentation and a strong DIY spirit. Ukraine has a long but often overlooked history in electronic music instruments. During the Soviet era, several devices were built here. The Iridium drum machines from Kiev, polyphonic electronica keyboards from Lviv, and additional electronic instruments produced in factories in Kharkiv. Again, these are Soviet-era products, but unmistakably Ukrainian in design. Today, Ukraine has become one of the most vibrant modular synth hubs in Europe. Companies like Aircraft Design, Dnieper Modular, Happy Nerding, Sylph Modular and Knob Farm show how much creativity, engineering talent and cultural energy comes out of Ukraine today. It's not just a historical part of the Soviet synth landscape, it's a modern, independent center of innovation shaping the European scene. Russia has a very distinctive place on the synthesizer world map. It never had large commercial manufacturers, but it has a long tradition of engineering and experimental electronics. Soviet-era instruments like the Polyvox and Elita were built under limited resources, and that rough, aggressive sound became a part of Russia's musical identity. Today, modern boutique companies like Soma Laboratories and AVP Synth continue this tradition with highly experimental instruments such as the Lyra 8 or the Pulsar 23. Russia's electronic music scene is mostly underground but culturally influential, from Soviet synth disco to the modern techno scenes in Moscow and St. Petersburg. So we can say Russia doubles down on engineering, innovation and a very unique sonic character shaped by decades of limited resources. China is one of the largest manufacturing nations in the world, but on our synthesizer map it plays a surprisingly small role as a brand creator. Most Chinese companies focus on mass-market electronics, not on boutique instruments, and synthesizers are cultural products, not industrial commodities. And that's why ASM is such an exception. The HydraSynth is one of the most advanced digital synthesizers, and ASM stands out because it behaves more like a European boutique synth company rather than a typical Chinese manufacturer. Small team, strong design culture, deep DSP knowledge and a clear artistic vision. China has excellent engineering talent and enormous production capacity, but historically very little synthesizer culture. There is no Kraftwerk, no Jara or Newman. Electronic music arrived very late and mostly through imports from Japan, Korea, Europe or the US. And that's why ASM feels so unique. It's a Chinese company operating with a global mindset in a field that China normally does not dominate. But China is changing. A new generation of designers, electronic musicians and boutique makers, from main quiz experimental electronic instruments to the club scenes in Shanghai, Beijing and Chengdu, show that China is slowly developing its own electronic music identity. The country is moving from pure manufacturing towards creativity and innovation. China dominates production, not synthesizer culture, but it's clearly on its way to becoming more creative, more experimental and more influential. Australia and New Zealand may be far away from the traditional centers of synthesizer culture, but they have produced some of the most creative boutique makers and a surprisingly influential electronic music scene. The most important instrument from this region is the Synthstrom Deluge, a fully standalone groove box from New Zealand that has achieved international cult status. This is one of those few modern instruments that does everything: sampling, synthesis, sequencing, performance. The Deluge is a fine example for what small teams can achieve when they're not constrained by tradition. Australia contributes with experimental boutique makers like Sine Vibes, Mannequin Electronic and Alta Music, and both countries have strong modular and DIY communities. Their instruments often feel unconventional, playful and designed with a very open mindset. Culturally, the region has a vibrant electronic scene. Flume, The Presets, Empire of the Sun, Pendulum and New Zealand's Shapeshifter all use synthesizers as a core part of their sound. These countries dominate by creativity, open-mindedness and the willingness to experiment. Japan is the most important country in the history of synthesizers. Roland, Yamaha, Korg and Casio created nearly every iconic instrument that shaped modern music. From the TR-808 to the TB-303 to the DX7, the CS-80, the MS-20 or the Korg M1. What makes Japan unique is that they didn't develop synthesizers because of rock culture, but because of engineering culture. Japan's electronic industry, its precision manufacturing and its long-term corporate stability created the perfect environment for innovation, long before synthesizers became mainstream. Culturally, Japan embraced electronic music, for example by the Yellow Magic Orchestra, through its massive video game industry of course, and through J-pop and city pop. Synthesizers fit perfectly into Japan's aesthetic, futuristic, clean, technologically expressive. Japan may not dominate the modern boutique scene, but it remains one of the pillars of electronic music culture. And without Japan, electronic music as we know it simply wouldn't exist. My personal impression is that Japan has a unique relationship with technology. A sense of pride in craftsmanship, engineering and innovation is deeply valued. Think of it this way. A synthesizer is not only a device that carries culture, the device itself is an expression of artistry and culture. Japan's synthesizer innovation slowed down in the 90s because the country fell into a deep economical crisis, and at the same time software instruments became the new frontier of electronic music experimentation. From there on, Japanese companies focused on safe, reliable products instead of radical ideas. The DIY community. Some of the most interesting DIY synthesizer communities come from regions that rarely appear on the synthesizer world map. Spain has strong engineering education and a vibrant maker culture. Think of Scythian, for example. Latin America combines passion, innovation, improvisation and community. And the popularity of Latin American synth YouTube channels shows how much interest exists there. South Africa has a small but highly creative DIY scene shaped by uneven access to electronics and a strong musical tradition. Meanwhile, Europe, North America, Australia and New Zealand remain the established centers of DIY culture, supported by high education levels, good access to components and long-standing maker traditions. Conclusion. If you look closely, synthesizers aren't just instruments, they're indicators. A country that can support many synth manufacturers has good infrastructure, strong education, cultural depth, scientific tradition, and enough wealth for people to spend money on creative technology. And in the DIY world, the signal is even clearer. People are so well educated and comfortable that they build complex electronic instruments in their free time. The United States remains innovative but struggles with its own identity. Europe is a cultural superpower that risks drowning in bureaucracy. Eastern Europe is exploding with creativity. China is where Japan was in the late 70s, an industrial giant discovering its artistic side. Japan is playing it safe at the moment, but remains one of the pillars of modern electronic music. And as a conclusion to the conclusion, here are my own thoughts to this. Synthesizers show which countries believe in the future. They reveal who invests in creativity, who values science, who educates engineers, and who has enough wealth and stability to let people just experiment. So, if you want to understand geopolitics, take a look at who builds synthesizers and who doesn't. The world map of synthesizers is a map of culture, education, wealth, stability, and imagination. And maybe, just maybe, this tells us more about the future than the nightly news. If your country has synth manufacturers, you are already in the top tier of global stability and prosperity. So maybe don't let social media panic convince you that you are living in the apocalypse. And that's it for today. Thanks to listening to this long monologue. That was something new on this channel. And if you think I left out something very important, or the country you live in should be mentioned here, please add it in the comments to this video. I'm eager to hear from you. And let's see, if this video catches on, maybe we can take a look at each country individually and perhaps even talk to people in the scene or in the companies. Subscribe for more electronic music news and interesting electronic music gadgets. As always, thanks for watching and see you again next week. Bye bye.